Yesterday, May 20, 2026, something happened in the capital city of Harare, Zimbabwe, something that every African should know about. A country's highest court, the Constitutional Court, opened its doors to hear one of the most important legal cases in Zimbabwe's recent history. A case that will decide whether one man, the president, can change the constitution of his own country to keep himself in power. A case that will decide whether the will of the people, written into law, can be erased by the very person that law was designed to control. Journalists rushed to the courthouse. They came with cameras, they came with recording equipment, they came ready to show the world live what was happening inside that courtroom. And then they were told to stop. In a letter issued by the Constitutional Court of Zimbabwe on May 19, 2026, just one day before the hearing began, the court dismissed an application by Sources Media Network seeking permission to conduct live courtroom coverage of the proceedings. International Crisis Group, the public is not allowed to watch. The cameras must stay outside. Chief Justice Elizabeth Gwaunsa dismissed the application, stating that, quote, no sufficient basis has been demonstrated to warrant live coverage inside the courtroom. Stimson Center, no sufficient basis for letting the people of Zimbabwe watch, live, as their constitution is being fought over. In a democracy, today we tell you exactly what is happening in Zimbabwe, why it matters, and why every African should be watching very closely. Before we go deeper, share this story right now. This news broke less than 24 hours ago. Most people across Africa do not know it is happening. Share this documentary on your WhatsApp, on your social media. Send it to someone in Zimbabwe. Send it to someone who cares about democracy in Africa. Because when a court silences the press, the only way truth travels is through people like you. Share it. Now let us tell the full story. To understand what is happening in that courtroom, you first need to understand what CAB 3 is. CAB 3 stands for Constitutional Amendment, Bill number 3. It is a proposal that was approved by Cabinet in February 2026 and gazetted for parliamentary debate. It proposes increasing the presidential and parliamentary term from 5 years to 7 years. If implemented, this would potentially allow President Mnangagwa to remain in office until 2030, 2 years beyond the current constitutional timeline that would require him to step down in 2028. Al Jazeera, but the term extension is not the only thing CAB 3 wants to change. The bill also proposes replacing the direct popular election of the president, where ordinary citizens vote, with election by a joint sitting of parliament. It also proposes enlarging the Senate with 10 presidential appointees, meaning the president picks his own senators, and it proposes transferring the voters' roll to the Registrar General, removing it from the Independent Electoral Commission. Wikipedia let us break that down in simple words. Right now, in Zimbabwe, the people vote directly for their president. CAB 3 wants to change that. Instead of the people choosing the president, Parliament would choose the president. And who controls Parliament in Zimbabwe? Zimbabwe African National Union Patriotic Front, known as ZANU-PF, Mnangagwa's own party. So, in simple words, remove the people's vote. Give that power to Parliament. Parliament is controlled by Mnangagwa's party. Mnangagwa's party picks Mnangagwa. Mnangagwa stays in power. When Zimbabwe enacted the 2013 constitution, former President Robert Mugabe had been in power for 33 years. That constitution was designed specifically to prevent that from ever happening again. CAB 3 is now proposing to dismantle the very protections that were put in place to stop another Mugabe. The country that suffered under one man for 33 years, is now watching a new man try to stay in power using the same playbook. The people of Zimbabwe are not silent. The hearing that began yesterday involves a challenge brought by war veterans and civic activists. Ruben Zulu, Godfrey Gurira, Shorai Nyamangondo, Joseph Chinyangare, Digmore Ndia, and Joseph Chingua, against Mnangagwa and Attorney General Virginia Mabiza. International Crisis Group. These are not politicians, these are citizens. War veterans who fought for Zimbabwe's freedom, now fighting in court to protect it. Ruben Zulu, one of the veterans leading the challenge, argues that the amendment process is fundamentally flawed and unconstitutional because Mnangagwa has a clear conflict of interest as the primary beneficiary of the bill he is pushing. Stimson Center, think about that clearly. The man who benefits most from this law is the same man presiding over the cabinet that approved it. The applicants accuse the president of improperly presiding over cabinet discussions involving measures directly affecting his own political future. International Crisis Group, they are asking the court for one thing. They are seeking an order barring Mnangagwa from signing, assenting to, promulgating, or advancing CAP 3 or any similar measure. International Crisis Group. And it is not just the war veterans speaking out. Informal submissions dated just 6 days ago, May 15, 2026. The Law Society of Zimbabwe warned Parliament that key provisions of CAB 3 are unconstitutional. The Law Society said that clauses proposing to extend terms from 5 to 7 years effectively seek to override Section 328(7) of the Constitution, which specifically bars term limit amendments from applying to sitting office holders. The Law Society said, if these clauses are adopted without a referendum, their adoption will be inconsistent with the Constitution and international law. NPR inconsistent with the Constitution and inconsistent with international law. Those are serious words from serious lawyers. Here is what makes this story even darker. The court case is not the only battleground. Outside the courtroom, people who oppose CAB 3 have been facing something much more physical. Authorities in Zimbabwe have intensified their crackdown against critics of CAB 3. On October 28, 2025, the offices of a prominent civil society organization in Harare were badly damaged in a suspected arson attack. The assailants reportedly abducted the night guard and locked the property's gates before fleeing. The attack took place just hours before the organization was to host a dialogue of civil society and opposition leaders about Mnangagwa's term extension. Wikipedia, a building burned down. Hours before a meeting about the constitution. A few hours later, police and suspected ZANU-PF supporters shut down a similar event in Bulawayo, focused on Zimbabwe's constitutional crisis. Wikipedia in March 2025, over 90 political activists were arrested for allegedly intending to promote public violence after opposing term limit extensions. Activists who spoke against CAB 3 were assaulted in the presence of police officers who did not intervene. Al Jazeera 90 activists arrested. Arson attacks. Assaults while police watched. This is not the behavior of a government confident it is acting legally. This is the behavior of a government afraid of its own people. A social justice group called the National Democratic Working Group petitioned the African Union to suspend Zimbabwe, accusing Parliament of orchestrating what they called a coup in motion. Al Jazeera, a coup in motion, not soldiers with guns this time, a pen, a bill, a parliament, and a court that will not let the cameras in. Let us come back to where this story started. The journalists, the cameras, the courtroom door that was closed in their faces. The state, represented by Advocate Sylvester Hashiti, successfully blocked the live streaming request. Hashiti argued that consent for live coverage would only be appropriate for the state-controlled national broadcaster, the ZBC. Stimson Center, only the government's own television station, can cover the most important court case in Zimbabwe right now. Chris Mhaik, representing Sources Media, accused the state of blatant discrimination. He argued that all media houses enjoy equal rights under the Constitution. Stimson Center. And here is the most chilling part of the state's argument. The state alleged that private media could be, and these are their words, harboring ulterior motives. Stimson Center private journalists covering a public court case about a public law that affects every Zimbabwean are being accused of having hidden motives. In a democracy, the courtroom belongs to the people. The people's representatives are the press. When you remove the press from a courtroom where democracy is being debated, you are not protecting the court. You are protecting a secret. Zimbabwe has been here before. For 37 years, Robert Mugabe changed laws, rigged elections, silenced journalists, and crushed opposition to stay in power. When Mnangagwa took over in 2017, many Zimbabweans and many Africans believed things would be different. And for a while, they tried to hope. But CAB 3 tells a different story. The bill's cumulative effect is a fundamental reordering of the constitutional system, which increases presidential authority while weakening mechanisms for popular participation and democratic accountability. The proposed amendments accelerate Zimbabwe's ongoing trajectory of democratic regression, equal democratic regression, not progress, not reform, going backwards, and a courtroom that will not let the cameras in. On the day that regression is being challenged, is not a courtroom that is confident justice will be done. Zimbabwe's people deserve better. The war veterans who fought for this country's freedom and who are now standing in a courtroom fighting for its constitution deserve better. And Africa, which has watched too many leaders use too many legal tricks to hold on to power for too long, deserves to say enough. The Constitution is not a personal diary. It belongs to the people, and no president, no matter how powerful, should be allowed to rewrite it for his own benefit. The hearing continues in Harare today. The cameras are outside, but the truth is still being told, and it is being told right now through every person who shares this story